Welcome to Breaking Solo, how solopreneurs break barriers, build brands, and embrace the future of business.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Breaking Solo. I'm very excited to have my guest today. Dan, I didn't ask you how to pronounce your last name correctly.
Rochon. Dan Rochon.
Thank you for being with me today, Dan. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So tell the audience what it is you do.
I help salespeople, entrepreneurs, and small business owners to have consistent and predictable income. And that's a big opportunity for those groups of people because sales is tough, and not knowing where your next paycheck can be tough, and having those challenges internally with your spouse or whoever, that can all be tough, and having a blueprint of how to be able to have consistent predictable income is helpful, and that's what I do.
That's very helpful. I know most solopreneurs hate sales.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it just, it scares them to death.
Yeah.
So if you have a system that helps with that, that's powerful.
Yeah, and it's a system that anybody can implement too. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that today, right? But it's something that regardless of your experience, of your skill set, of your success or lack of success, I've been able to document a blueprint of exactly, follow these steps, and you're going to have, it's like a chocolate chip cookie recipe. Put the flour in, the sugar, the butter, the chips, bake for 325 for 8-10 minutes, and boom, you got a chewy, gooey chocolate chip cookie. That's the same way as Teach to Sell is. It's predictable.
That's good. So tell me, what inspired you to go into solo business?
I've always been, since I've been 8 years old, I've always been an entrepreneur or a salesperson. I just didn't know how. And so for the majority of my life, I've spent, earning, whether it be tips, as a waiter or a bartender, or commissions or revenue, as a business owner. And I've always known that I was destined to be able to help people to be able to solve their problems and achieve their goals. I just didn't know how, and so it wasn't until I was, 32 years old as a formerly recovering addict, I was waiting tables at that point. And that's what caused me to say, you know what, I'm going to create and design my own life. And that's what got me into, and, originally being a solopreneur, and then building businesses, that are more significant through time.
Good for you. So what's been your biggest challenge being a solopreneur?
I would say it's getting a clarity on what's the next most important thing for me to focus my energy on. And so what I recognize is that when I'm building something in business, you're not making money when you're building something. And so you have to simultaneously be able to say, how do I generate income? And that takes a lot of time. And how do I build a business? And that can take a lot of time as well, right? Now, you certainly can leverage through other people's systems, et cetera, right? But regardless, being in the business and working on the business at the same time is two very different skill sets, takes two different levels of energy and two different types of investment. And one of them, you don't get paid immediately. And the other, you have to be successful at generating income before you can, then build, unless you got an investor, which is great as well. Right. But either way, you have to be able to make ends meet.
Exactly. So what inspired you to find this unique niche that you have?
I had a business coach of mine, John Vandergast, around 15 years ago, would say to me, Dan, you're really good at sales. You get hired 85% of the time as a real estate agent. You get hired 1 to 3 times a week as a real estate agent, and that's unusual. And he says, how can you take what you do and basically put it into a box? And at the time, I had no answer to that question, none. And so it took me, maybe another 10 or so years for me to actually document what I've been doing, put it together in a framework, and then give it a title, which is Teach to Sell, which is the way that I do teach for others to implement, to ethically influence. And it was really about saying, if you have this skill and it is something that can be repeatable, how can you document it in a sense that other people can understand and then implement it? And so it was really a journey that started maybe 15 years ago, and then it evolved through time where it wasn't like an intentional effort that entire time, but it was a lot of learning, a lot of discovery, a lot of documenting. And then, once I started putting it all together, it took me around 5 years to write my second book called Teach to Sell, which is what a lot of what we're talking about today is published in that book.
That's amazing. So, what's a strategy you use to stand out from the competition?
I use experience. And so whether you have experience or you don't have experience, we all have experience in life. It's just how are you going to frame it? Right. And so understanding that instead of like, I don't jump up and down, twirl around, sing and dance and yodel to be able to get hired. Instead, I educate, I guide, I look at what are the predictable problems that are really likely to occur. I'll give you an example. So as a real estate agent, which is, part of what I do today, even still, when a buyer and a seller go under contract and that buyer goes home that night, they're scared, they're anxious, they're tossing and turning, they got an argument with their wife or their husband or their spouse or their partner, whoever. Next morning, they wake up and they get a text from their sister saying you're a freaking idiot for doing this. And then they're hating themselves, right? And so that's a predictable experience that the consumer, my real estate buyer consumer has. So instead of allowing for them to go through that on their own, and feel isolated and feel like have this like energetic, I'm not feeling good about this. It may not be associated towards me, but it's just about the experience. Instead, I teach to sell first, where I go through and I tell them they're going to have that experience before they do so. And so that's an example of the way that we can implement this technology in business. It's just understanding and say, well, whatever's going to likely happen in the future, let me address that up front rather than waiting for it to become a problem, be reactive. I'm going to be proactive instead.
That's so smart because now you've taken the edge off of what they might have experienced.
I had a client around 6 months ago, gave me a call the next day after we went under contract. He's like, Dan, I am so freaking grateful that you did that you had that conversation, because last night I was tossing and turning. I wasn't sleeping. I was nauseous. I woke up this morning scared, and I remembered that you told me I was going to experience that. And I'm so grateful that you did. Now think about the experience. This guy had a bad experience. And
Yeah.
in one case, it's like what actually happened, appreciative of his guide, me as his service provider that walked him through what to expect, versus he could have had that same experience without me guiding him before it. And now guess what I just did? I just caused myself problems and him, because if you don't have that conversation, they go through this emotional roller coaster, your client does. And the next day they're like, I don't feel great. Well, now you're risking them saying, you know what, I'm just going to change my mind. Right now you're completely reactive rather than proactive.
Yeah. And instead, he appreciated you for
And
the
it gained the trust, right? It's
Yep.
when you teach to sell, you gain trust, right? And you become the guide, right? And so you go back to answer the question, the original question, which was, what do I do different for my clients? Why do people hire me? It was, that was the original question somewhere along the line of that is, I take the time to educate. I take the time to guide. I take the time to connect with them in an energetic level, to gain a deep level of rapport. I ask them adept questions that are deep diving to be able to uncover and unravel the truth of what it is that they're afraid of. And then I actively listen. I pay attention to their energy. I pay attention to the way that they're transmuting their feelings, right? And you can clearly see sometimes somebody will say, hey, do you want to buy this? And you have two spouses and one says, yes. And the other says, yeah. Right. Well, if you're not paying attention to the energy, you can really put yourself in a bind if you're not, like addressing it in real time. Say, oh yeah, well, I hear you saying, yeah, but there seems to be something that's causing you to not move forward. Would you care to share with me a little bit more about like what's causing you to be afraid or what's causing you concern? And now you can start dealing with the reality of what their internal pain is, and then also identifying their external pain, and then moving them to their internal and external desire as the service provider, as the bridge between the pain and the desire.
That's really good. Really good. So tell me, do you see any shifts happening that could change the way solopreneurs work in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's always technology, like if you go back through and you say like I've been doing this for more than 20 years. And during that time, it's always been technology, big data, and artificial intelligence. The difference is AI hasn't really taken off over the last 18 months or so, depending on when you're listening to this. But the thing about it is it's like a hockey stick growth, right? It's exponential. And so AI has been around for the entire time that I've been in business, but it hasn't grown at and right now it's growing. It's like double and double and double and double the capacity. And so when you understand that, there's not a lot that you can do. There's nothing you can do about that as a business, as a solopreneur, nothing. But what you can do is you can pay attention and you can leverage. Okay. Because ultimately, either AI is going to put the entire world out of business and nobody has a job, or the people who adapt to the technology, the people that learn it, the people that leverage it are going to be the ones that are going to have a highly competitive advantage over the rest of the marketplace. Okay. So, but that's true through time. It's always like, what can I leverage? What can I scale? What's the technology available to me? And understanding that 25 years from now, 100 years from now, it's going to be something different, right? But the question is going to be the same. Donna, you're going to be asking me 100 years from now, how does this, whatever it is, impact, how do the Martians impact the, the way that we operate here on Earth? Like, they're going to compete and take all of our jobs from us. Like, all right, cool. Right. But, it's just a different problem and you just got to solve it.
Yeah, for sure. I hope I'm not here in 100 years, Dan.
I want to be here. I told my doctor the other day, she told me that, that I was healthy. So I told her I needed another 65-year guarantee. She wasn't willing to sign off on that, but I asked for it.
Good for you. So tell me, what's one tool, app, or resource that you can't live without in your business?
Tool, app, or resource. I mean, I'm pretty basic, the tools that I use, regularly in my business is, all the Google products. Now that we're, implementing AI, the last piece that I'm not implementing in my business yet, but not the last piece, but the next piece I'm going to be implementing in my business is Claude. And I haven't really dove into that yet. But just figuring out how I could take some of the administrative tasks off my plate to get it a little bit more streamlined, more predictable, more consistent, and that will allow for me to take the people that I already employ and really reallocate their time and effort. Like I want to make their jobs easier so that they can focus on what's the most impactful activity I can do today, such that by doing it, everything else becomes either easier or unnecessary. I learned that from Jay Papasan and Gary Keller from The One Thing, a book that they authored. That's the question I want my entire team to be asking, right? Figuring out like, how can we use AI and technology? Additionally, it was more the Google products, and now it's gearing into more AI products that I'm finding that we're embracing as tools to be able to use and deliver and exceed our clients' expectations.
That's good. I use Claude to organize my downloads folder.
Yeah, I hear it's great. I haven't even opened it up yet, but I know everyone I've talked to is like, yeah, you got to do it.
Yeah, you got to. Okay, tell me, do you have daily habits or routines that help you stay focused and productive?
I'm somewhat autistic, so I embrace habits. Every day's a piece of habit, right? And so it's understanding like, what are the 4 things in my business that cause something to make a difference, and those 4 things are to be able to lead generate, go on appointments to get hired. So lead generate, convert people to meet with you, go on appointments to get hired, and to negotiate. Those are the 4 things that when I do those 4 things every single day, I produce results in my business. I told you about a challenge of working in the business and on the business simultaneously. So there's 5 things working on the business that I focus on. And that is to recruit talented people to me, select the right people to be in business with, train those people so they can reach their goals, lead those people so they know how to think so they can reach their goals, and motivate those people to reach their goals. So that's 9 activities, 4 in, 5 on. And then there's 1 thing left over, which is to manage your money. So I look at my money every single day. And so those are the 10 activities as a business owner that when I focus on those activities, I produce results. So going back to habits, my habits is that 1 to 3 hours every single day, I have the habit of finding business every single day. I don't care if I made $100,000 today. If I didn't spend the day finding business, I feel as though if I didn't have a successful day. And I also have the habits of like, I go to the gym every day at the same time. I start my business day at the same time. I think as solopreneurs, it's like, if you're your own boss, you almost need a schedule, right? Like for me, I meet with my team at 9 a.m. Eastern time every single morning. And that's really, they start at 8. I don't meet with them till 9 because I let them get their self sorted. And then we meet at 9, and really there's accountability, there's training, There's vision, communication during that meeting, but really which is all great stuff. But just the fact that we're meeting at a consistent time means that I have to be ready to work by 9 latest. Now, typically I start, around maybe 6 or 7. I'm just, creating things, working on the business, right? But by 9 o'clock, I'm thick in my business by that point. And then doing things like this, for example, I just spent a half a day working in my business. I've got 3 interviews today, just like this is the first of the 3. For the rest of my afternoon are going to be having conversations like this. That's planned. Everything is planned where it's just not happenstance where we say, well, we'll take an interview where Dan could go, I can go, my staff will say Dan could go at 10 a.m. They know I'm going to say no to that because at 10 a.m. I've got the habit of lead generating. And so it's like putting those 4 things, and I'll say them again for you, which was to lead generate, convert the leads to meet with you, go on appointments to get hired, and negotiate. Those are the 4 things in the business. The 5 things on the business is to recruit talented people to you, select the right people to be in business with, train those people so they can reach their goals, lead those people so they know how to think so they can reach their goals, and motivate those people so they can reach their goals. And then the 10th one's to manage your money. And so that I've got habits to make sure that every single one of those 10 happens daily.
That's amazing, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So what one piece of advice would you give someone that's just starting their solopreneur journey?
You are not in the fill in the blank of the name of your business. You are in the lead generation business, primarily focusing on that as your, whatever your business is as your vocation. So for example, if you're a plumber, you're not in the plumbing business. If you're a plumber, you're in the lead generation business with plumbing as your vocation. And so when you understand that, you say, well, what? I just want to be a plumber. I'm a great plumber. I know how to do everything, with my eyes closed. Great. But if you're working for somebody and they're feeding you business, if you've got nobody to go plumb with, it doesn't matter how good you are. So it's just sitting there taking a look at what's the first step of any business. The first step of any business is to find new business. And then the second step is then to cultivate that business and to serve them, right? But a lot of solopreneurs miss that first step. And then that's where they struggle. So you got to have daily habits, just like what we talked about, every single day, 1 to 3 hours a day, no matter what, where you're finding the business. And then you take, segments of the rest of your day to be able to serve it or to do things like what I'm doing right now, which is working on my business to be able to help as many sales. My mission is to help 1 million salespeople to be able to have faith and to have the models of being able to generate consistent, predictable income. That's my mission. This conversation helps me to be able to make that mission into a reality. And I'm helping those people through my writing, through my books, through my podcast, No Broke Months podcast, through through my consulting and through my coaching. And that's the way that I help those 1 million people. And I'm really on a mission right now of being able to get Teach to Sell into the marketplace as a reliable way to say, here's the 4 pillars of business. When I implement these 4 pillars of business, I have consistent, predictable income. And those 4 pillars of business are: number 1, to believe in yourself. Number 2, we already said it, to go find business, know how to find business, whether it's through prospecting or marketing or networking. Number 3 would be then to be able to say, how do I build an organization around me of structure and systems? And then number 4 is, how do I lead? And leadership is, as I shared with you previously, to teach somebody else how to think so that they can get what they want. So it's belief, lead generation, organization building, and leadership are the 4 pillars that are taught within the consistent, predictable income community that I lead. And they're the epitome of Teach to Sell.
Good stuff there, Dan. So tell the audience, you have any exciting projects or launches coming up that you want to share?
Well, I got the book I mentioned, right? And I'm really excited about this. This is Teach to Sell. It's being published by Post Hill Press. It's being distributed by Simon Schuster. If anybody ever wants to know about the power of persistence, try to publish a book by a major publisher in 18 months after about 27 no's. The first yes was a good yes. And I'm really grateful that I'm in business with my publisher and the distributor. And Teach to Sell. Consumers can go to www.teachtosellbook.com. Of course, they can go to Barnes and Nobles or any retailer, but if they go to teachtosellbook.com to get their copy of the book, then I'm going to give them a $10,000 training course for free. You just got to get the book. And that $10,000 training course will show them step by step on how to be able to go through those 4 pillars based off of their behavior, based off their experience, based off their knowledge. And it's designed to be able to help anybody by literally just like anybody could bake a cookie, just like what we said. You just have to follow the recipe. This is the recipe. So that's teachyourselfbook.com.
Amazing. Okay, tell people where they can connect with you and learn more about what you do.
Dan Rochon, Rochon. Google me. And if you find the hockey player with no teeth, that's not me. I'm the guy with all my teeth, or at least it looks like, some of them are fake, right? But I'm the good-looking, handsome guy with the eyeglasses and the beard.
There you go.
And you can find me online. I'd love to be your social media friend, whatever platform that is your platform of choice.
Dan, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation.
You're welcome, Donna.
Thanks, everybody. Come back next time for another episode of Breaking Solo.